Hello and welcome to the program which looks at the Holy Land. I am Paul Calvert. Jeremiah 31 verse 17 from the New King James Bible says this: "There is hope in your future, says the Lord, that your children shall come back to their own border." I'm with Brian Schrauger, who's a journalist here in Israel. Now, Brian, you've just been to the Ukraine-Moldova border. Who did you go with?
I was taken over along with a group of journalists by IFCJ, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, also known as the Fellowship. We went to see their operations in Moldova, which is a country that I really wasn't familiar with. It's right next to Ukraine on the on the western side of Ukraine. And in their capital city, Chisinau, IFCJ has a couple of operations or centers where refugees, especially Jewish refugees coming over, can recover and make application for immigrating or making aliyah to Israel. So we went to see that operation in Chisinau, the capital of Moldova, and we went all the way over to the border with Ukraine.
So you actually went into Ukraine?
We did not. Well, we were right at the border crossing, but it's the most western point of Moldova and very, very close to Odessa, Ukraine. In fact, we were only about 30 miles from Odessa. Palanka, I think, is the name of the place, the city in Moldova where we went to the border crossing. So at the border crossing, when we were there wasn't a lot of activity at first because the volume of refugees had gone down a bit from the initial days when so many were fleeing Ukraine. But there were people coming over, a lot of mothers and children without husbands, because men between, I think, 18 and 60, if I recall correctly, have to stay in Ukraine. They're not allowed to leave so that they can be called up to do military duty, to fight the Russians.
And why did you want to do this trip?
I was invited, and I was intrigued. It's always fascinating to me to see how Jews from around the world have been treated, are being treated, and how they make their way to Israel.
And at the border, was it just Jews that you were watching coming over? Was just everybody coming over? And how are Jews getting back to Israel?
At the border, it was everybody coming over. There was one mother, very well-to-do, with her young daughter carrying a cute tiger or stuffed lion toy. And the mother came and stepped up to a microphone and was interviewed, and she said something. Well, she said many things, but she said, I've had to leave my beautiful home. The Russians were bombing us from the Black Sea. So from offshore, they were being bombarded by battleships, I assume, and mostly, I guess, on top. Russia almost certainly has submarines there, too. But they were being bombarded at the time, and she and her husband had a meeting, and they decided it wasn't safe for her. So she was grieving. She said, I came over, and she was stoic but grieving. She came over and said, I've had to leave my beautiful home. How do you feel? She was asked, and she said, I'm sad and I am full of hate. Never forgive, never forget. And it was such a poignant moment because she was being very emotionally honest, and you could really see the trauma that these people are going through. Families, she had literally just left. It was like a 30-minute drive at most from where she'd come to cross the border with her child, leaving her husband and her home behind.
And Ukraine was a great country as well, wasn't it? So suddenly they've been, prosperity, doing well, and then it's tipped over.
Yeah, they have. And especially these people that were coming over were, in American or European terms, we would say they're very middle-class people. They're not especially poverty-stricken. Of course, we saw some like that, but these are people who appear Western. They're very Eastern European, but they appear Western, right? They're very bright, sophisticated people who live lives similar to the lives that many of us live in the United States and in the West, in Europe.
Did you hear many different stories?
I did. One of the most interesting was a very vivacious young mother named Anna. And a friend of mine who was also a journalist on the trip was interviewing her for a Spanish radio program. And I listened in and later got a copy of the interview. Her name was Anna. She and her husband and a 3.5-year-old son, Kai, were coming to Israel. And like I said, her husband was with her. What's the deal? Well, she's not Ukrainian, she's Russian. And her story was intriguing. She said she and her husband had taken, as it turned out, the last flight out of Moscow on a vacation that took them to Bulgaria. The very next day, Russia invaded Ukraine, and she, in Moscow, had been an anti-war activist. So they didn't take them long to realize that they couldn't go back. And so what did they do? And she said, in Bulgaria, we weren't treated especially well. She said, I was actually born in Moldova, so we came to Moldova. We were treated much better. And she said, I didn't think we'd have a chance to come to Israel, but my husband's father was Jewish, and so we qualified. And anybody, according to Israeli immigration law, anybody with at least one Jewish grandparent is qualified to immigrate to make Aliyah to Israel. So they were taken through the process, and they were accepted, and they're now living here. Wow. But I was so impressed with her because she was upbeat, she was positive, she looked forward to learning Hebrew, she looked forward to learning Arabic. She said, my child's going to learn both, and I think it's actually been easier for us because we don't have much money, because it's hard to get your money out of Russia right now. Her whole attitude, I just could not help but feel that in spite of all the trauma that she and her husband and son were going through, that she was going to do just fine.
Now, the Fellowship of Christians and Jews, do they have an operation there? Are they helping to get Jews back into the land?
Indeed. They have, I forget how much money they've put in. They've put in millions of dollars, providing food, clothing, shelter. And when I was there, it was at the 1st of April. And when we came back, when we flew back on a Thursday, maybe April 7th, if I recall correctly, that was the 20th flight of refugees being brought back to Israel, making Aliyah, and all but paid for by the IFCJ.
Wow. Yeah. So do you see this as biblical prophecy being fulfilled, because God says he will bring them back to the land, and although war is a terrible thing, God is still able to use that to bring the Jews back to the land?
Oh, absolutely, and that's been going on for some time. This is just the latest iteration of this ongoing process of what I, in fact, also agree is the fulfillment of prophecy. It's just very, very moving to see the actual people that are coming over and how they're coming. I think it's very easy when we read the Bible or hear sermons to think that these people are, not really being able to relate to them as people. You know, we read history, we think of it as history, or we think of theology as facts or truth. But to actually encounter the people, the real living people who are involved in being kicked out of their country or being forced to leave their country, not really kicked out, but being forced to leave because of war, and then going through the whole process of being displaced and coming to Israel and encountering that firsthand is very moving.
Are people bringing just what they can in their hands, a suitcase or two, as they're escaping?
Yeah, it was really interesting. When they came across the border, when we saw them coming across the border, Palanca in Moldova, they looked like they were like families going on vacation. You know, they had as much luggage as they could carry, and 3, 4, 5 suitcases, and they were just pulling it along like they're going on a vacation. But of course, they're escaping. Yeah, they bring what they can carry, and then they're dependent on the goodwill and help of others who are there. And we saw some Christian relief groups. The United Nations was there. And so there were plenty of resources available to these people. What I found interesting is that among the refugees overall, most of them are not yet going to other countries. They're waiting, hope against hope. They're hoping they can still go back home. So a lot of them are living in Moldova and Poland, countries that are very close or contiguous to the Ukraine.
So they're hoping it's just going to be a really, really short war. And they don't want to be refugees, they want to go back home.
Of course they do. I mean, who wouldn't? Yeah. You want to go back to your house, your nice house, your nice life. Whether that will happen sooner or later is yet to be seen.
Is the border coping?
Is the border coping? It appears to be. I was not there when it was at its peak. I understand that several weeks or early on in the conflict, thousands were coming across, and they were having to trudge through mud for about 2 miles to get to a place where they got help after they were over. Things have been shorn up since then, and the volume has gone down. At least it had at the 1st of April, and I think it probably still is not as high as it was. Nonetheless, is the border coping? Yeah, they're coping. I mean, we saw, in fact, it was almost like a train station or a rest stop. It was very, very nicely designed. It was clean, nice bathrooms, nice waiting areas. It was mostly outdoors, but it was beautiful. In fact, one of the ironies to me, or paradoxes, was it was a beautiful, beautiful day, spring day in Moldova. And these people were coming across on this beautiful day, basically leaving everything behind. And so for them, it was dark, but it was easy to be, I don't know, it was just interesting to see the paradox of this beauty and horror. And then what really dawned on me at the end on Thursday, because it was just a 3-day trip, seeing people actually waiting in line to board the plane to come to Israel and hearing some of their stories and realizing, yes, there's beauty, and beauty can sometimes mask horror, and yet the horror was real and doesn't necessarily go away. It is redeemed by hope, which basically counteracts the despair with life.
I guess in one sense they're seeing the worst of humanity, but when people are accepting them to come into another country, they're seeing the best of humanity as well.
Exactly. And it's a remarkable thing. It's something that, I just found very, very moving.
Life has changed dramatically. There must be a lot of fear and sadness there.
There is. I mentioned Anna and her story, her husband Sergei and her little boy Kai. And I have followed her on Facebook and corresponded with her a bit. And she's actually very courageously open about how difficult it is just emotionally. Because in fact, you grieve. I mean, you're just like it's a kind of death. It's a death of a life you have to leave behind, and you're coming into a new life. So there's just a very complicated set of emotions of sorrow and hope mixed together. There is a grieving process going on, and it's the same grieving process anyone goes through when a loved one dies. It's maybe this is not death as such, but it's death of a way of life. It's death of a home and a homeland, perhaps, for these people. So it's not an easy thing. It's emotionally, spiritually, very difficult.
Now, husbands have been broken from their wives and children. Is there a lot of fear for the future?
Well, of course. I mean, the mothers and everyone puts on a brave face for the children, but they're all very concerned about husbands, brothers, sons, fathers that have been left behind, because a lot of people are being killed in this conflict.
Was it emotional for you?
Well, it was moving. It's very moving to me. Personally, what really moved me to tears the most is the story I mentioned to you earlier about this woman who came through. What was her name? I forget. I'm drawing a blank right now. But the one who said she is full of sadness, full of hate. And her emotional honesty was so moving to me. I was fighting back tears.
Through the sadness and despair, can you see God in all of this?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's easier perhaps for us to see him on the outside looking in than for them looking out. But to see his provision for people through Israelis who are helping, through others who are coming in to help, is a remarkable thing to see. He provides, and yet he's doing it through people.
Are there many refugees that are actually made it into Israel?
I believe the number currently is about 15,000 that have come in. Now, Israel has braced itself for more. I don't think we're going to see a huge influx, at least not yet, because so many of the refugees, even those who are Jewish and qualify for Aliyah, they don't want to come here. They want to go back home if they can. So at least for a while, I think we will see most of them staying in Moldova and Poland, where they hope to go back.
What's your prayer for the Jews of Ukraine?
Well, my main prayer is that they will hear the voice of God in all this. Just as anyone who suffers, it's an opportunity to either get bitter and angry and turn away from God, or to tune in to him. Now, tuning in doesn't mean being happy or peaceful. It can often mean wrestling with him, which is a Jewish sensibility that I really, really admire. People who are suffering are actually, and even angry with God, are closer to him at that point in their lives than perhaps any other, because you can't be angry at somebody you don't believe in or you say doesn't exist. So actually wrestling with God is a revelation of faith, right? And hopefully it's a revelation to the people experiencing it, and they turn toward him to wrestle with him on these issues, and not turn away from him and raise a fist at him.
Okay, Brian, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Pray that God will move by his mighty power in the Holy Land and bring his peace.